Hi guys, Alex Simpson here for another Apex Racing Academy setup tutorial back in the Formula Renault. We're still at the Nürburgring, just trying to get these last couple of videos done even. Well, this is I've done this slightly differently. Instead of a video that I've uploaded where I can make lots of mistakes on and edit it all out, it's going out live, so no pressure on myself whatsoever. But yeah, thank you to Mr. Berry for sorting out all the live videos. Right, so last couple of videos have all been about we did aero balance and then we did suspension in the last video. So now we're looking at, so the dampers. Now, there's not a lot I can really show you on the dampers about, how they interact on the road. So there won't be so much driving in this particular video, and we can sort of look really at the setup that we had from the suspension video and go from there. Now, the Renault, it's not like some of the other cars that we've got on iRacing that has the high speed and the low speed dampers, and it doesn't have them on every corner as well, so it's actually quite simplified. So dampers doesn't have to be as daunting as you think it could be. All you really need to know is what the fundamentals of the damper does, and then you also want to know is what you want to use it for. Because we've only got one damper and we haven't got the high speed and the low speed, so let me just define the differences between those so you can understand where we're going to go with this video. So a high speed damper, we would adjust that purely on things like bumps and curbs on a racetrack. So if we smash a curb or something like that, the speed that the shock is going to move or the piston in the shock is going to move is going to be really, really fast, and subsequently the high speed damping area is what you change. And now, I'm not an engineer, but you'll have to forgive me for this, but I believe the high speed damping is controlled on is actually like a little separate cylinder that comes outside of the normal damping, and you can control the high speed compression and rebound damping in that little area there. So it's like little fast, real quick, little just sort of up and down kind of thing. And then the low speed damper is the bulky part of the cylinder, where the car's going to do a lot more of its travel. So this is when we sort of brake into a corner. So you think, obviously, as you brake, the car really compresses down. So we've got a lot more travel rather than just a little just a whack, kind of up in the air, because you haven't got enough time when you hit a curb. You just sort of like smash it, and you'll be in the air pretty quickly, and you're just trying to reduce the speed kind of thing, because it does its business really quickly. So yeah, so the low speed, and then obviously the squatting coming down out the corner as well, and vice versa in the braking, the rear end pokes up, and when you accelerate, the front end goes up. Sorry, take my gloves off. So yeah, so we don't have the high and the low speed to worry about on this car. So like I say, it is somewhat simplified, but the damper itself does do exactly the same job. It does affect how the car rides over bumps and curbs, and also how the car transitions in and out of the corner. So if I just look at the bump stiffness on the front, now I can put the mouse over and read to you what exactly this means, but I'll be honest, even I took a while to understand what exactly that means. They do not make these descriptions very simple at all, and especially when you've got negative and positive and all this kind of stuff. So let's just try and make this simple as possible. So now, whenever I say soft or less damping, that will be as many clicks to the left. When I say hard or more damping, that's as many clicks to the right as you can get. Now, on the front bump stiffness, if I was to go as soft as possible, what that means that would do, so it would have two effects. when I come and brake into a corner, if I've not got much damping in the front of the car, um, it's going to drop fairly quickly to to its lowest point kind of thing. So, and when it does that, it also means that the ride height on the front end is dropping as well. So as you brake, the car compresses into the ground. Yeah, and that affects the aero balance too. So on a open wheel sort of high downforce car, you have to keep that in mind. So if you reduce that damping, so we would go to zero, the car's gonna dip to the ground a little bit better. It's gonna dig in, yeah, and the aero balance is gonna be changed, so it's got more rake onto the car. So the car's gonna turn more. So what if you are suffering with a little bit of understeer in some of these corners, then what you can do is that you can just knock these bump stiffness down just a fraction, and that will help the car bite and turn into the corner and give you a bit more aero balance towards the front as well. So that's one thing that it does. Now, obviously, the reverse is also true. That if you were to stiffen it up, then the car would be slower to compress down. So going into the corner, the car wouldn't be quite as low, so you'd have slightly less aero going into it, and it wouldn't want to bite, dig in and bite quite so much and turn into the corner. Now, ideally, what you want to do, I mean, I use the dampers really to fine tune how the car goes in and out of corners until I need them to do something slightly different because of like a major curb in or really bumpy area of the circuit, and then we'll have to go and switch and perhaps look at that instead. And excuse me, got a fly. And yeah, so like I say, I'll fine tune these so I get the right rotation into the corner as I want using the bump stiffness. And now, what if the track is really bumpy or we've got a little troublesome curb or something like that? Now, if we don't have any damping on the car whatsoever, then of course when we hit a curb, or a big bump or what like that, there's nothing to stop it from going, doing the full travel of the suspension very quickly. So, which can cause the car to react rather nastily over the curbs. What we're trying to do is, if you've got a real troublesome curb or a troublesome bump that's causing you issues and making the car unstable, then you'll want to fine tune that damper so that it doesn't obviously max out its range of movement. So if it's a real big nasty curb, you might want extra damping on there just so that it's not so violent. But also, it could be the other way around as well. It could be that it's so stiff that the car's not actually moving over the actual curb. It's hitting it, and just it's so solid that it just goes it sort of flies. It's like a ramp more than anything. So we have to sort of balance that damping so that the car will sort of glide over the first part. The bump is the first part, so when it initially strikes it, think of that as the curbing. I hope you can see that on the little camera. It sort of, as you hit it like that, that's the bump that's doing it. It's pushing the front is effectively in the middle of the car, is dropping down compared to where the suspension is, just as if it would be the braking, or in this particular case the suspension's going up. So the same is true. But yeah, so if it's too stiff, it will just whack off that and jump. If it's too soft, then it will just compress all the way up, and the bottom of the car will hit the ground as well. So we've got to find this nice little balance where the tire rides up the curb, but brings the car up with it, but it doesn't sort of ramp off of it because it's too stiff. So if you've got real troublesome curbs like that, there's things you can use in Motec to help you, like damper histograms and things like that. Again, this is the basic course, so we won't go into that. And actually, next season in the Academy, I'm going to do a separate video just about damping histograms, because sometimes it's too much to go into even on those videos as well. So it's kind of like a trial by error really. So just do one damper setting at a time, and just have a play and just sort of take it back, watch it on a replay, and see how the car reacts to it. What you want it to do is you want to see that tyre ride up the curb and stay connected to the curb as it goes, up to the top. If it hits the curb and instantly the car's like, like that, then you know that you're too stiff. And then vice versa, if you just the wheel rides up the curb and the car just sort of bottoms into the top of the curb, and you drag on the top, then you know that the damping's too soft. So you can fine tune and adjust. Of course, if you're having to do that with the damping, that's going to affect the way that the car goes in and out of the corners. So what we would then do is, you'll know what you've done. If you've made it stiffer, you'll know that you've taken a bit of aero balance and a bit of turn off. So you could in turn give it a little bit more front wing, or drop the ride height again, like a couple of like a mil or something like that on the front, or take a bit off the rear wing, or make the rear ARB a bit stiffer to make it turn, or just make the front end a little bit softer to make it turn. There's many ways of sort of getting that turn back. And then if again we've made it a bit softer, so it's turning too much, well, you can just raise the ride height of the car just a fraction, just so that it doesn't rotate, or soften up the rear ARB, stiffen up the front spring. The springs I would try to leave, because they are going to affect how the damper wants to work as well. So the springs would be last resort if you can't get your bite or your right rotation back in. Right, that's quite a lot on just a front bump damper, I know. So on the rebound, pretty much everything in is the reverse is true. So again, all the way to the left means less damping or softer. Depends on how people want to say it. All the way to the right means more damping or stiffer. So what where the damping comes into play on the front end of the car is when we accelerate out of a corner. So the damper doesn't really come into play on low speed, or just anything, sorry, we haven't got low speed on this, until we get back on the gas pedal and start to accelerate out. Because what that does is, think of the car like a seesaw. You hit the gas and it sort of does this. Yeah, so when we're braking, the car's going down and the back end's coming up, but when we're accelerating, the back end starts to squat and the front end comes up. So that's where the rebound comes into place. Now, if we have more damping, that effectively means that we're trying to slow the rate that the car will come back up like that, because we're basically just trying to keep the car where it is, yeah, so stiffer, so it's harder for the car to come back up like that, yeah, or more damping. If any of you have ever raced RC cars, you'll know, like in the dampers, more damping would just mean less holes open in the damper, so that the shock doesn't want to extend very easily. Like, you're trying to pull the oil through the piston and through the holes. And that's exactly the same principle that we're doing here. So with more damping, the car's going to want to stay keeping the front end down. Now, what that will do with keeping the front end trying to keep it down while the back sort of squatting a bit, is that it means that the car itself will actually have a more sort of front aero balance setup. So any like rake and things like that, even on a tin top car, is exactly the same thing. It still gives you some turn based on the aero balance, because the air pushes it still helps the car sort of rotate. But yeah, so what we'd be doing is trying to keep that front end into the ground a little bit, and that will make the car rotate off of the corner a bit more. So we'll have more rotation come when we're on the gas coming out of the corner. Now, less damping will mean that front end will pop right up very, very quickly. And in turn, that means the car will want to sort of push out wide coming off it. So if you've got sort of understeer coming out of a corner where it's pushing wide, then you want to keep that. You'll want to make this damping as stiff as possible. So just to zero here, for example, instead of the -75. So we could go 3 clicks stiffer, just to try and keep the car turning through the corner. And I don't know if you remember the suspension videos. Some of the hairpin sections I was struggling with, just wanting to get the car to come out of the corner. So that would help me there. As well. Now, and vice versa, like I say, if it was too much rotation coming off the corner, I was getting a little bit of snap on the car, then I could come down and that would make the car want to basically sort of track out a little bit more and not over rotate coming off of the corners. Now on the rear of the car, um, the basically it's completely the opposite to the front end. So if I talk about the rebound first, because rebound on the rear end is when the car is braking. Remember what I was saying earlier on with the when you brake, the front end goes down, the rear end comes up. Yep, so same principle again. All the way to the left means soft or not very much damping. All the way to the right means stiff or more damping. So again, just think of it again like the seesaw. I really hope you can see my hands, otherwise I'm just gonna be chatting rubbish and you won't see what I mean. So as the car dips down to go into the braking zone and the rear end starts to poke up, that will give you more rake once again. So if for example, the rear's coming up too much and almost lifting off the ground, very hard to do in this little Renault, almost impossible, I would think. Then what we'd want to do is we want to control that damping, so we'd stiffen this up a little bit here, so that it's not coming up so fast. And what that will do is that will control how the car turns into the corner as well. And sometimes you might think, well, okay, so I've got a bit too much over rotation going into the corner, and you've just tried the front damper, made it a bit stiffer, but of course that's had the negative effect of making it rubbish over a particular curb. Well, you've got the rear one that you can go and try as well, and it might be actually, even if the front gives you some advantage, some fine tuning of the rear might actually help as well with the rotation in. And the opposite is true. Again, if you want the car to rotate more, then have less damping, so the back end pops up a bit quicker. That will give you more rake. That would make the car turn into the corner a little bit quicker, a little bit better, a little bit freer. With the bump stiffness, this is all about when we get back onto the gas. So again, think of it as, like I say, we're accelerating down, so it's reacting the same as the front rebound. We're affecting the front rebound, and then we're squatting the car down. So again, if we're getting a little bit too much rotation, the car's a bit squirrely coming off of the corner, what that'll be is that we're sort of preventing the car from squatting into the ground and getting that bite off of the tires. So what we would do is we'd just soften up that 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 damper there on the rear, so it can just sort of move down a bit lower, and dig into the ground. And again, the vice versa, if we're getting massive understeer off the corner, well, you'd stiffen that up so that it can sort of, it sort of rotates around the corner a little better in conjunction with the rear rebound adjustments that I made. So, coming off the corner, it will sort of be doing this instead of doing this. And that will make the car sort of turn off the corner, because you've got slightly better aero balance sort of front to back for the rotation. Most of it with the aero cars, it's all about the aero balance. It has a much bigger effect, so dampers can have a much larger effect on the aero cars. Or I think they're easier to notice, but they do exactly the same things on the tin tops. It's just that the dampers are a lot bigger on a tin top than they are on an aero car. Well, you see the little Formula One ones, they're like tiny little things that are on the, well, I say tiny, they're probably about that big. Yeah, something like that. That underneath, and you can see the heave. They've got a heave spring as well with the Formula One. So this one effectively is the same thing at the front end. You've got one spring that will attach the push rods, and they will sort of work. They'll work together. Now like I say, on the rear, you've got independent on left and right, which is always quite useful. But yeah, so the same principle is there again. If if you make some adjustments to one for a curb or a bump, so if you're smashing a curb on the rear and the rear sort of bottoming out and hitting the deck or something like that, then you'll need to stiffen up the rear bump. But if it's just hitting it and flying, then you'll have to soften it up. With the rebounds, Yeah, both front and back. This is when we're transitioning. So we've reached the top of the curb or bump or whatever it is like that, and it says we're transitioning down. So if Rodolanta is a good one to as a good example. That sort of blind hairpin, that blind sort of corner in the sort of first sector. So you come through turn one up to the left, and then you go across that sort of that there. Now, if we have the because it's quite a curb there that we take, so we get the car to ride up it nicely. But if it comes down too quickly, as if in we've got too much, we haven't got enough damping, so the car wants to hit the ground really really quickly. It might be that the tire sort of starts to come down before we've gone all the way up the curb, or it's sorry, that's not the right thing to say. Um, if we have too much damping, sorry, and that we come down, and when the car goes up and over the curb, then and it can't come down fast enough to come down the other side of the curb, so it comes down with a bang kind of thing. Then what we'll do is we'll get like a bit of pogo. So if it's too stiff, it's when you can get the car to bounce with the pogo sort of thing. So what you want to do is you want to try and get your obviously you want to fine tune your rebounds for the in and out transition of the corner, but you also need to try and fine tune it so that on a bump, when you come over a bump or a curb like that, it comes down at the same rate as the curbing as well, and that will keep the car connected to the ground. If the tyres are connected to the ground, you'll get more grip and more control. Um, so yeah, it tend to be like if you've got pogo, I would 9 times out of 10, if you can see that the car is on the way down kind of thing, it's where it hits the ground, then I would suggest that your rebound is probably just a little bit too stiff, and it's not coming down quick enough with the car. And also on the rebounds as well, on the rears, um, when you've got tracks like mid-Ohio where you go over a crest and you come down, that's all about the rebound. If you're losing the car as you come over the crest, so like as you go up that big hill, and then you've got and you come down, and the car gets a bit light as you come down the hill, and then you've got that sort of the S's section, and you come along the right hander, and you're sort of turning to the right, going over that crest as well. If the car gets loose and you lose it there, then that will be to do with the rebound. So the car is getting light effectively as you're coming down, and the rebounds are too stiff, so it's not dropping the rears quick enough to keep it connected to the road. So that's where the rebound. So you would just soften up the rears there. Right, I think that covers everything as far as the rebound goes. Like I said, I don't need to do any laps or anything like that today to show you that, because it's just more of a practical thing in the garage and Nürburgring. There's not too much. There's a couple obviously of bumps and curbs and things like that to worry about, but yeah, it's all really, the damping is all about fine tune and a little bit of trial and error on those things, but just know what you want from them. So like I say, you've got to think of this car as it affects both the bumps and the way it rotates in and out of a corner. So if you're making changes for the bumps, then expect that you're going to have to change other things in the setup to get the balance back to how you want it. So don't necessarily just give it up because it's slower elsewhere. If it's much better over that bump, well then go and refine the balance elsewhere, and then vice versa. If you change things to make sure that the balance feels better, but the bumps are worse, just be mindful of that. You might have to drive around that if it actually is like you're like, oh yeah, this balance feels great, but it's a bit rubbish in this curb, so I just need to be a bit wider, which can be the case at places like Imola. I noticed that we did some damper changes that were fantastic for the way the car drove, but really didn't help it over some of those high curbs, so we just had to sort of avoid them a little bit. Alright guys, thank you very much, hope you enjoyed that. I think that's probably one that you're going to have to watch back a couple of times, digest everything, but it's pretty short and sweet. Again, any questions, as always, just post them in the on YouTube or in the forum section that we're doing. And yeah, obviously I put some information up about season 4 do go check that out. So we're going to be back for season 4. We're going to carry on working on this car, doing the basic track guides and things like that, and working on the Academy 2.0. That's all going to be kicking off in week 13. So go check that out. Keep an eye on the forum for when the sign-ups and everything go live for that. And again, if you've got any questions, you don't know exactly what it's all about, well, post on there and I'll let you know. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, guys. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next video, which will be all about brake bias and diff adjustments, which will be up in, well, all of about 10 minutes time. Alright, catch you later. Bye.